Good afternoon. It is indeed another blessed day on another edition of Book It. I'm your host, Java. I am so excited to be here with you again on tonight. You know, week after week, we are having some phenomenal authors, some men and women of God that has birthed through the written word a message for this season. And it's been meat in due season. And I don't know about you, but on last week, we had just a high time in Zion with Pastor James Doggett Jr. and his book entitled Standing Ovation. And he just let us know that God, is there with his heavenly approval for you. You are created. You are his craftsmanship. You have been ordained to walk in the experiences that God has birthed in your life, and you're going to be victorious. Don't worry about the critics, but just know you have Christ who is on your side. He talked about how Stephen was stoned, but what gave Stephen the ability to see past those stones was that Jesus stood up. There's something happened when Jesus stands up, and he is standing up on your behalf. And so his book entitled Standing Ovation is available to you today. I want you to go to our website, and you can get a copy of this book at secsda.org/book it. And there, while supplies last, you can order your copy. We have just a few more left, and we hope that you are able to be tremendously blessed by that message. Well, look, I'm sorry, but the train is still moving, and we have another powerhouse author here on tonight. We have with us Dr. Kathy Ann Hernandez, affectionately known as Dr. H. She is in the house, and she's written an amazing book. This book is entitled Waiting by the Brook, and you can right now go to that same website, secsda.org, and grab this book right away, / you better book it, right? This book is for all ages in all times, and it is a relevant word. I would even dare say that it is a Rhema word. It is a word in due season that will help you along the journey. So listen, without further ado, we want to bring on our special guest. My privilege is to introduce to you Dr. H. How are you doing, madam?
I am excited. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, listen, I am so glad that you're here today as well. And I am so excited about your book entitled Waiting by the Brook. I mean, please just share with the viewing audience, what inspired you to write this book?
So thank you so much, Pastor Mattison. If I'm honest, I have to say that this is not a book I plan to write. It is not the book that I would write, but in my own life, I've really learned, and I'm learning to really listen and follow the promptings of God. I believe there are things that you can do, and there are things that you should do. And for me, this was one of those things. It mirrored a lot of experiences that I was having as a Christian. And I just knew that this message and the things that I was dealing with, feeling as though I had been put in this waiting pattern with God for a long time and not understanding it. And some of my friends who would talk to me would ask me, people ask you all the time, well, how are you doing? And we give the form response.
Exactly.
I'm okay. I'm doing all right. But for those who were really interested in some of the struggles I was experiencing personally, spiritually, professionally, I
Yes.
would just say, I am waiting by the brook.
Mm.
Because the experience of Elijah as he sat by that brook really resonated with me. And the story just became dear to me. And it was the catalyst for this book.
Yes, yes, yes. Listen, at the end of the day, so many of us, have challenges. And I like what you did say in your book when you would give a more tempered response to the question, how are you doing? I'm waiting by the brook, because that does open up, for conversation and dialogue. Well, what do you mean I'm waiting by the brook? And it for me, it gives a theological framework on how, as you said in your book, to label the experiences that we go through. Because sometimes how we view our brook moments, and we're going to talk about that, will determine, right, how those moments impact us, how they transform us, and how we're able to embrace, as you say in this book, the intimacy that God is trying to bring us to in these brook moments. These are critical moments, right?
Absolutely. And one of the interesting things as I studied more in writing the book about this brook experience is that Elijah had prayed for the drought. He had prayed for this series of circumstances in which he found himself. And I think certainly I heard one preacher say, and I think it was the most honest description of God that I have heard that really resonated with me, that oftentimes in our Christian experience, we find God to be a perplexing God. A perplexing God. Because he had prayed for the rain, God had answered his prayer. He went and he told King Ahab what's going to happen here. And then God says, okay, you go sit down and wait by the brook.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it was a hard time. His audience had been reduced to ravens, and all he was given was meat from the ravens and water. And I think oftentimes when we think about Bible stories, we have a way of glamorizing them. But you think about what it must have been like there. And I think a lot of us can sort of empathize now, because we have experienced this long season of just waiting, and not knowing when you would get your next assignment from God.
Yes. So this is what you said, because in your book you use the story of Elijah being told by God to go down by the brook at Cherubim, and there he was to wait on the Lord. And you use this idea of a drying brook, a brook that was drying, a brook that was supposed to be a temporary place, right? Mm-hmm. As a metaphor on how we should in real life, deal with our waiting seasons. And this is one of the scriptures you said, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he will strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. And you said the psalmist counsels us to wait on God. And here's the bombshell question. I think it opens this book up. But what does it mean to wait?
Listen, I don't know about you, but I do not enjoy waiting. And if I'm honest, I become downright impatient, irritated. And in an age where social comparison is so ubiquitous, we find that often we look to a right or to a left and we see that other people seem to be moving along at a steady pace, but we're stuck in a standstill. And so it's a challenge for us to understand how we can navigate the wait.
Waiting is so important. This is what you said. This is what you said in your book. You said a problem with waiting is this: I don't know about you, but I don't do very well with waiting. Talking about this microwave society for something or someone. In fact, if I am honest, I can become downright impatient, resentful, even when I have to wait. And so this waiting idea that you propose in your book a lot of times may be to answered prayer. You're waiting on God to answer a prayer. You're waiting on God, after a prayer is answered, these different stages. But you talked about something early on in your childhood about a reunion and about waiting, and that seemed to be the springboard to this whole concept about waiting from a personal experience. Do you mind sharing that portion of the story to our audience?
Oh, well, absolutely. I would preface it by saying this. I have come to accept that our personal experiences is the gospel according to Kathy, according to Mattison. It's what God, the experience of God in our life has been. And so for me, my waiting experiences began even before I was born. I was abandoned as a baby by my mother. And so I begin the prologue by saying the first time I met my mother, I was 7.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is, I don't even know how old I was. That's what I have been told. And I had waited in all those years expecting that she would come back, she would take me, she would embrace me, and she would explain everything. Well, it didn't go like that. She wanted to satisfy her curiosity to make sure I was okay. But after that, she left. And so I think when we think about our relationship with God, oftentimes based on the experiences we've had with significant people in our lives or experiences that we have some angst or some ways that we feel about waiting, and it inserts itself into how we feel when God tells us to wait to get married, to wait to have a child, or that whatever debilitating disease that you have, you're going to have to wait, like he told Paul, that this is going to be with you it's going to be with you, because
the thorn in the flesh,
with you. You just need to wait on me and I will strengthen you, because what I've come to realize, and this is the central point in my book, is that the gift is in the wait.
Yes. There's something that happens to us while we wait. God reveals himself while we wait. And that's really can be said the climax point of life.
Yeah.
When God chooses to show himself.
Well, he does. God does things in and through us. And actually, I was talking to my husband about this. And if you've seen the new movie Forrest Gump, it really became a metaphor for how I close the book when I'm thinking of you see Forrest Gump sitting on this bench with this man. And for the whole movie, we have a long experience of different stages of his life. And as I look back at the arc of my life and I see God has done amazing things in my life. I never thought I would have a PhD, and God gets all the glory every time, every day. But I see how those things pale in comparison to the relationship that I've developed with God. And those of us who are married know that there are times when you want to quit, there are times when you want to stay, there are times when you just want to pull your hair out. It's just too much to bear. But in the end, you wouldn't change it for a thing. If you have navigated and grown closer and being transformed really from two into one, there's a oneness.
Yes.
And so through the process of navigating the challenges of life, because the framework that helps me is that this world is broken. Everything in this world is broken because of sin. But a loving God is able to use the brokenness and transform them and use that as an opportunity to help us to grow spiritually, to invite us into deeper intimacy with him. And through the challenges we experience, show us the path to meaningful service. We learn to profit from the pain.
Yeah. I was thinking that idea of profiting from the pain was going to be on our second edition. Now watch this. Now, in terms of waiting, by the way, let me just reset the room, and let everybody know we are with Dr. Kathy Ann Hernandez, and she has written a book, Waiting by the Brook. And I want you to know that there are some Brook experiences that you may be going through right here and right now. You don't want to leave. You want to click the share and like button, because I'm telling you, we are in for a treat. We are just getting started as Dr. H shares with us, her experience in waiting. And here's some of the things that she talked about in her waiting experiences. She talked about here in this waiting experience. She says, I was praying for several things, right? She's waiting. 3 things in particular. So she gets real specific. She's got her prayer journal, right? My father's health, asking God for a negative cancer biopsy. Temple University, asking God for full scholarship to Temple University for doctoral studies. She is Dr. H, so I think the Lord came through. For a husband and family, praying that God would bring my husband to me and bless us with children. So she's talked about what it means to wait here in this book. And you may be going through something right now, and she is sharing with us how to wait. And so, Dr. H, here's another thing you said. There's a paradox of living through a waiting period. Hear me, child of God. On the one hand, we are admonished to live gratefully in the present, while on the other hand, we are encouraged to have great expectations for the future. Express really quick just that tension, what you're saying here in that quote.
Yeah, it really, really is challenging. And I think when we exist in that space where we really have to be grateful for all that God is doing for us, but at the same time, God has big dreams for us. He has big plans for us. When I think back about my earlier life and some of the things that I was dreaming for myself, I had no idea I would have a doctorate. I was content with I think perhaps like I mentioned with Dr. Mattison, Pastor Mattison before we came on, that there's a temptation for Elijah at the brook to be satisfied with a bread and water existence. But God has bigger plans for us. So we have to live in this tension of contentment, but discontentment, because we know that God has bigger plans for us. And it's a challenge. And I think that's where faith comes in. That's where trust comes in.
Yes. Yeah. Well, God has bigger things, right? Here in this quote, you said there is a temptation for Elijah at the brook to be content. So there's this tension to be content at the brook with having just enough. He declares a famine, and there's a drought, right? He's at this brook with just enough water. There's a famine and there's no food, and he's at this brook with just enough bread being fed by ravens. And so in these moments, you're saying, hey, don't be satisfied with the little flour and the little oil from the widow of Zarephath, right? Because God is wanting to take you to an experience that is otherworldly. Did you hear what Dr. H just said? She paints a picture. You paint a picture, Doc, that shows us where Elijah was satisfied at the brook. And see, this is where, from your book, the blessing in waiting, where we have to still have that hope and expectation, for greater, so how do you hold on to that hope and expectation, as you mentioned in your book, without becoming in despair?
Yeah. There's so much to unpack in that. I think, I could talk about it in different ways. For me, let me use a personal example. When COVID struck is when I started writing this book. I had a book contract with a publisher to write this book, and I've done that before. And as I sat down to do that, I just felt really prompted to write this book. And I said, well, I'm just going to do a chapbook. It's going to be 10,000 words, and I'm going to just get it out. And
Yeah.
10,000 words turned into 15,000 and 20,000. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a pastor. This is not in my scholarship wheel. I do diversity and inclusion and women leadership. And so I was comfortable with my publishing contract over here. But for me, this is where I felt God's Spirit leading me to do ministry and to make myself uncomfortable and to go in that direction, because ultimately all the things that we often pray for, as wonderful as they are, I wanted a husband, I wanted children, I wanted all of that. God's plans for us is for us to have a forever home with him. And we lose big time when we don't make that the focus.
Yes. Well, we have a home in glory land that outshines the sun. And sometimes while we're waiting on the Lord, we can lose that hope, right? And so this is what you said. Waiting on God is one of the activities that challenges us the most. So for our viewing audiences, whatever it is you're praying on God, whatever it is you're experiencing right now, don't lose that hope. You said we don't enjoy waiting. We can begin to doubt God while we wait. We can become frustrated with this period of perceived inactivity. And you talk about that. What does it mean to wait? It's not just inactivity. It's a collaboration. We'll get there. You said, and we can even decide to abandon the wait altogether. There's a danger to abandon the wait. There's a danger to move ahead, right? There's a danger to go back, as it were, to Egypt, because you don't know what God is doing. He invite you. You said he invites you to be cut off, right? Even in the word, I believe it was cherubim, that means to, in a sense, to be cut off.
Yeah.
And so in these waiting moments, God is wanting us to make sure that we don't lose that hope and expectation. You said the Hebrew word for wait means to look for hope and expect.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we've established, and I don't know if there's anybody listening who likes to wait, but waiting challenges us. And I really want to use this opportunity to talk to somebody who's listening, because a lot of people have written me and said this book really ministered to them.
Yes.
Whatever you're going through, people are going through a lot. People are questioning because they find God perplexing. And even as I'm sitting here, I am still in a waiting period. I am still waiting on God. But one of the things I've come to realize is that far from being a period of inactivity, the waiting period is actually the most active period of the Christian experience, because it is in that time that God has to do his work in you. Ellen G. White talks about the work that God had to do in Joseph to make him ready for leadership, where he would have a heart for justice, where he would have a heart for those who might be at the margins like his brothers were when he was the favored one. So there's a work that God will do with us in the wait if we change our perspectives. And this is one of the things that I am learning to embrace. Is it an ending because you didn't get the job, or because you didn't get to marry that person you hoped, or is it a beginning of something else? And the other thing is, often in the wait, I think we think that what God expects us to do is to just sit there and twiddle, and he's going to do everything for us. I am struck as I read the Bible over and over again, the times when God invites us into collaboration with him, when he doesn't even need our help at all. But it's an opportunity for intimacy. And so we are called to do things to develop ourselves while we wait, and to begin to live in hopeful expectation for what God has in store for us next.
Yes, look, I'm just gonna go right there, because we're in the wheelhouse now. You said there are 4 paradigm shifts that are necessary for us to navigate the Brook experience successfully. Now, Elijah in the story, he waits by a brook at cherubim. So there's 3-stage progression, so the waiting part, is something that we have to not abandon. This is God calling us to not abandon it. But the thing about it is, you said that God sent Elijah to hide first by a brook that soon dries up. So sometimes we're waiting by a brook that's going to dry up. We go to a house that don't have food, and you ask yourself the question, God, what are you doing right now in this season? And someone may be asking that question. You said Cherith is the place where God withholds what you want the most. Cherith is the place where God closes the door on what you wanted to do for him. It comes to every Christian at some point in their journey. You said at Cherith, God chooses to hide Elijah for a season. So, child of God, what you need to know, Dr. H says, hey, listen, that this waiting is a season. Here Elijah must wait patiently and trust that God will indeed do what he has promised. Is there anybody out there that's doubting God, that he is going to do what he said he is going to do? Well, that's what the wait is all about.
Yes.
For you to keep hope alive. I know there's a slogan out there, but Dr. H, they got to keep it alive. So he waits at a brook. Talk to us about the brooks in life.
So I use the brook as a metaphor for dark chapters that we can experience in our lives. They feel dark to us. What's interesting and what struck me is that Elijah had prayed for this season of drought, this famine. He had prayed and asked God for it. And now that God has answered his prayers, God tells him, go tell King Ahab there'll be no rain. And then he says, okay, you go sit and wait by the brook. And this was a difficult time for Elijah. I think we tend to glamorize and think about things in ways, but I can't imagine. Elijah might have been doubting, did I do the right thing? Around him, people were probably dying from hunger, from thirst. And he's just there, and he prayed for this. And in my own experience, I have sometimes when we pray and we ask God to answer our prayers, we don't recognize the answer because it involves struggle, it involves pain. And I'll use the personal example. I met my husband through prayer, and I met him, and I know God answered my prayer. And yet I'll tell you, dating him was one of the most difficult dating experiences, one of the most pull your hair out kind of experiences in my life. And there might have been a temptation to think, well, God, what are you doing here? But I had to learn to wait on God, and we dated for 6 years. Yes, I told you 6 years. But there's a temptation that happens to us in the wait. We can make the thing that we are praying for an idol. We can come to value it more than the relationship with God. And so I think the waiting is an opportunity that really allows us to understand, how do we really feel about God? What are we in this relationship for? Are we in this relationship for the things that he can give us? Because if we do that, we're totally missing the point. And so the real question is will you continue in your relationship with God, even if?
That relinquish, you have to relinquish, the situation, the prayer request to God's capable hands, so that at the end of the day, you are trusting God no matter what the outcome is.
Yes.
These Brook experiences, right? You said at the core, Brook experiences are waiting moments in our relationship with God when we often feel most alone. I mean, maybe there's someone out there right now that's feeling alone right now and lack clarity about the next step in life. I mean, speak to someone really quick, Dr. H, who may be questioning those next steps in life.
Yes, I really do claim the text that you started with, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he will strengthen thine heart. The gift is in the wait. I know it may not feel that way to you, but in the wait, God is preparing you. If you allow yourself, as I am learning to allow myself to just be compliant, he is willing to transform you. Because what happens at the Brook is those knee sweeping kinds of prayers, they don't cut it. This
Yeah.
is when you
Yeah.
really get deep and real with God, and intimacy develops. And that's one of the gifts. The other gifts is that it is through the process of coming before God and petitioning him and crying out to him that he is able to do the work in us to transform our character. And the final thing is that if we learn to wait on God well, he, through our difficulties in life, that becomes a life advantage that we can use to develop ministry and service so that we can comfort others going through their difficulties in life. So continue to wait on God. The gift is in the wait. It might not seem like it, but a loving father is waiting to develop that intimate connection with you through the seasons of life.
Yeah. So these Brooks, you said, puts us in position of vulnerability. And if anybody's out there, you don't like being vulnerable. If you're at a Brook right now, if you're in a waiting situation right now because of a professional job related or personal situation or anything that's been life challenging, we've got to trust God to navigate us successfully through those Brook moments. You also said Brooks require us to wait on God when we lack the clarity about the next step. And this is big. This touched me. It touched me because you said, especially when we don't understand what has happened or why.
Yes.
I mean, when life just hits you, right? I mean, how do you recuperate when your equilibrium is off?
Yeah. And so my personal experience around that is I don't understand why my mother abandoned me.
Yes.
I do not understand why. And I don't think sometimes we think if we knew why, we might feel better. Why is not the answer, the question rather. It is through the experiences that we can learn to really develop intimacy with God. And I don't know what you're experiencing. Later on in the book, I talked about a dear friend of mine who died of cancer. I don't understand why. I don't understand why, but that's the basis of trust. And again, the framework is that everything in this world is broken. It's not how God intended. The best of marriages, you could do the best with your children. Everything is broken. But a loving God weaves the dark brokenness of our lives and still works it out for a good. And this is why Joseph could say, you meant evil against me, but God used it for good so that he could bless others. So that's the framework that helps me process. And I don't need to know why.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know who. Somebody. I need to know him, and I need to develop a relationship with him.
So as we begin the transition, right? One of the things that you mentioned in your book about the Brook, is the importance of us using those Brook moments where God calls us aside to wait, as a launching pad, almost like a redefining, as it were, of of our direction in life. I mean, speak to us about our Brooks being a moment to transform and to redirect or to give us a new horizon, because even in your book you talked about how you had kind of looked at your life just as a professor.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say there were many things that came together that coalesced to let me write this book. But if I had to pinpoint something, it was an experience I had about 3 years ago as a professor. I was beginning to feel a little tired, a little, I needed that God was calling me to do something else. I knew it. Mm-hmm. I knew it. And I I really am a woman of faith and of prayer, and I distinctly heard God's voice telling me that there was a position that I should apply for. And I was like, no, me, no, not me. And my husband said, you should. And I did it. And to my big surprise, I got through. I got all the way up. It was an administrative position at a very prestigious university. I'd never aspired to be an administrator, and the doors kept opening. And I said, God, if you keep opening, I'm going to keep walking. But honestly, I didn't even want to go. My husband didn't want to go. We loved where we are. But I said, God, you're in control. I'm going to follow where you lead. And made it to 5, made it to the top 2, and then bam, the door just shut. Just shut in my face. I didn't get the job. And I lacked that clarity. I didn't understand why. And I was upset with God. I was like, what was all of that about? You know, I didn't even want this. But in the process, I realized that, and my husband said to me quite wisely, perhaps it wasn't about getting the job. Perhaps it was about enlarging the vision for your life. And certainly through that experience, that's what it did for me. And I began investing more in leadership. I applied to be on the mayor's commission in Philadelphia. I took on leadership roles. I began to develop in darkness. And I believe this is what Joseph was doing.
Ooh, this is good.
Joseph, really, when I read that, listen, y'all need to go read that. We came over that. He was 17. Was he 17 when he was taken? You tell me, Pastor, when he was taken into Egypt. And I think he was in his 30s when he came to become the second in command. And look at what he went through. But he needed to develop in darkness. And so for me, this period of my life, Brook, is a developing station. It is a developing station. And I'm going to do all that I can do because God has something in store for me. I don't know what, and I don't know when, but I trust him.
You nailed it. You nailed it. So you said the Brook is an experience characterized by this growing discomfort with our current situation, but waiting on God to clear the path for us to advance forward in the direction of his calling on our lives. Not, the calling we think, because this brook is a timeout. God says, time out, come by the brook. It's almost like you're in a boxing ring and your coach is getting you ready for the next round.
Yes.
So what we're saying, if you missed it, we're saying that sometimes God calls you to a waiting place, a brook at Cherubim, where he puts you in isolation so that he can prepare you for the next level. So don't resist it. Don't fight it, because God is going to take you from a place of just enough. I feel like preaching now, Dr. H, to a place of more than enough. Can I use some of your book?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, when I really studied this thing and I just went through, Paul, after he was struck down on the road to Damascus, he went to Asia for about 3 years. Jesus, before he began his ministry, and think about it, 30 years, he knew the call that was on his life, but he didn't begin until he was 30. And even before he started, he went into the wilderness for 40 days. Moses spent 40 years in Midian before he could get back into Egypt. Abraham was promised a child when he was 75, and he didn't see the face of his son Isaac until he was 100 years old. You just go through
these are waiting periods.
And when you look at the people who God is calling to do something great in their lives, there is this season of preparation, and it's usually a hard thing.
Ooh, wow.
It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing, but it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Yeah.
And you preaching. Hey, listen, this book ain't for nobody else. It's for me. All right. Listen, we got to wrap it up. It says, when we come to our Brook experiences, whether he brings us to it, watch this, child of God, or transforms our mess ups into Brook experiences. That's a whole nother sermon right there. A loving God continues to provide for us. That's what you need to know. Whether he brings us to it, or transforms our mess ups. That is to say, he turns it out and makes it up for your good. Dr. H is saying that God continues to provide for us as we wait. So keep on waiting, child of God. Then you said the book becomes a resting spot. It is a place where we can experience renewal. So take this time to be renewed, to be transformed, renew your commitment to God and preparation for what's ahead. So that's where the hope is. That's where the expectation is, right? And so we got to hit you with these 4 paradigm shifts that's going to help you navigate your Brook. How do you navigate your Brook experience successfully? Well, Dr. H and I are glad you asked. All right. So, Dr. H, tell us, beginning or ending. Talk to us about this.
So, like I said, when I thought about the experience I had applying for that job, I felt as though it was the ending of an aspiration of my hopes for that position. But as I began to think about it, I realized it was the beginning of new aspirations. I recognized that I had been thinking too small about what I could do and how God could use me, when it was obvious that I possessed what was necessary to make it into the C-suite in a higher educational institution. So whatever you're experiencing, we always have a choice. We have a choice in how we reframe and how we think about it. During my period of waiting while I was dating my husband, in retrospect, now I can see how that was exactly what we needed. I'm from the Caribbean. He was born and raised in West Philadelphia. We needed to work through some of the cultural challenges and difficulties that we have. And we credit that now for the stability that is the foundation of our marriage. So not an ending. Nix that. You're at the beginning of the next phase of what God is calling you to do. What God was doing in Elijah was preparing him for a Mount Carmel experience.
So
Yours is coming. Yours is coming.
Yes. So this waiting, if you missed it, this waiting, you have to ask yourself the question: is this Brook a ending or a beginning? And we want to say, hey, label it as a beginning of something new, right? Don't allow the experience to cause you to dry up with the Brook. Dr. H don't want you to dry up with the Brook. The Brook is not meant to dry you up. the Brook is meant to pep you up. All right. Then it's a beginning, what she said. If we can make this paradigm shift in our thinking, we will see Brook experiences for what they are. Gifted time to prepare us for the Mount Carmel experiences that are coming. You said that to us earlier. And so, number 2, how do you make this paradigm shift? Is it a beginning or is it an ending? The second one you said, is it punishment or is it preparation? And here's your scripture text. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and of peace for those who have been trained by it. We can say for those who have chose to wait.
Yeah.
Right? You also said, as we go through the Brook experiences, our ability to get the most out of these experiences is reflective of the perspective we bring to it. If we come to view this season of our life as punishment, we will continue to suffer through it. I gotta pause, put a time out, and Dr. H just elaborate for a few seconds on that idea of not allowing that Brook to dry you up too.
Yeah. And I want to talk to single people out there, because I know I experienced this in my own life, where it seems as everybody who's married is having all the fun. But single, you can view it as a season of punishment or a season of preparation, or it's a choice, really. And you have to be intentional about creating that paradigm shift. In every season, there is beauty, but it's a choice. And so once I was able to do that, I began to enjoy some of the gifts that come with being single as opposed to being married. You guys can go where you want to go. I got to think about my children and my dog right now. And so, yeah, it's all about how we frame it. And as we are waiting, as I am waiting right now, I am claiming that God is not punishing me. God is actually preparing me for what's coming next in my life. And it makes a difference.
Wow. That's big. Here's another way you said, if you could read this for us.
Our dark moments, rightly used and understood, can prepare us for ministry and service in a way that seasons of ease and abundance cannot. Brook experiences can be our breaking point or they can be our making point. I firmly believe that.
I want them to be my making point. I believe that these Brooks are not meant to break us. Oh my God. Dr. H, you in this book have been a blessing to us in the viewing audience. Before we go, we've got one more paradigm shift for you. Resignation or expectation. Not that I speak in respect of one, for I have learned in whatever state I am in to be content. Is this resignation or expectation? Explain that to us as we begin to close our show.
Yes, while we wait on God, we have to depend on Him and expect that He is faithful to complete what He has started in us. And I am not just talking to you as someone who's been through it and been there, done that. I'm still in a waiting period.
Sure,
and
sure,
I'm expecting great things of God
Mm-hmm,
because of what He has said in His Word and because of who I know Him to be.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You said, while we wait by the brook, we must resist the temptation to resign ourselves to our fate here. The brook is not meant to be a permanent resting spot. It is meant to be a place of transition. Give us our final words, about waiting by the brook, for somebody who just feels tormented by this quiet place, this isolation, this place of just enough. Encourage them to know that more is on the way. Transformation is in order. Talk to us, Dr. H.
Thank you. So the subtitle for this book is Waiting by the Brook, 7 Steps to Deeper Intimacy with God. There are gifts that are coming to you, customized gifts born out of this experience of waiting by the brook. And so I want to challenge you, whatever you are experiencing, because I know that people are hurting. Sometimes they don't say it. And one of the reasons why I wrote this book is that I feel we are very good at giving the pleasant, happy Sabbath, oh, God is good all the time. And for some of the challenges that we are facing, we need to get real. We need to be honest that it's a difficult time. But if we can continue to wait on God and do the work of those 7 steps at the end, what we will get will be deeper intimacy with God. God is going to transform you spiritually. And that pain that you're going through is going to be the springboard for ministry that advances God's work in His kingdom. And that's what I'm in it for. I'm in it to win it. Heaven is the goal.
My. I tell you, this has been rich. And we're not done. I feel the move of the Holy Ghost. I don't know if I can have Dr. H to come on for round 2, because if you notice, we hadn't even got to the 7 steps. My God, my God. Listen, but we don't want to give you the whole book before you go and buy the book. Amen. So listen, we have some copies that we're going to purchase. secsda.org/book it. We only have 10 copies available, but we want to make sure that for those of you who are interested about learning how to navigate your Brook experience, this book is a classic, one for the ages, one that you will come back to time and time again as you find that God is calling you to your Brook. So go to secsda.org/book it. Get your free copy. Dr. H, is there a place that you would have our viewing audience to go should they want to go and purchase this book from you if they don't get a chance to get those free copies?
Oh, absolutely. The book is available on Amazon, and I have a Facebook group which I run called Value What Matters, and you can keep up with content and information that is geared towards helping you make it to the kingdom.
There you have it. You can go and research Dr. Kathy Hernandez, Waiting by the Brook, Amazon.com. I bought my copy, my Kindle version, and we're going to make sure we get those other editions to you. We want to say thank you so much again, Dr. H, for coming on. We do invite you again for our next show. We'll have to talk after this one to see if we can do a round 2. If we're able to do a round 2, we're going to try to air it, let's just say the first Thursday of July. Next week is going to be camp meeting, and so we will not have our show on next week, but we thank you for tuning in today. And we are here with Dr. Kathy Hernandez, Waiting by the Brook. Thank you so much. Until next time, we invite you to book it.